Well, let's call our August 22nd City Commission Committee of the Whole meeting to order. I would like to invite do we want to do this? Let's do this. I'm going to do a little pivot real quick, Trish, before I call you up. Let's call Viridis up. Let's talk about our Parks Master Plan a second. Frank, if I could lean on you to share a little background as we're getting set up at the mic here. So.
All right, Commissioner Babcock, feel free to chime in on this as well. What happened on August 9th, a couple weeks ago, was the Parks and Recreation Committee reviewed the 3 proposals that you see on the screen in front of you there. And those proposals were in response to our RFP that we put out, seeking assistance to assemble and get adopted a new Parks and Recreation Master Plan. The committee recommended unanimously that Viridis Design Group would be selected, and hopefully we can get your approval tonight because the City Commission makes the ultimate decision. We put in the RFP that way, and I think that's just good policy. So if the City Commission would like to discuss any of the proposals, they all track to the RFP, but the selection of Viridis I think is very strong, and they've worked with the city in the past, most recently on Community Park, and that project went very well. So Trevor Bosworth from Viridis is in the audience. You can feel free to come on up to here. We'll be more than willing to answer any questions you have, but what we're looking for tonight is potentially a recommendation to go with Viridis. And if we get that approval tonight, then Viridis will meet with the Park and Recreation Committee on August 30th and as kind of a scope meeting. And following that, we would come back to the City Commission with the contract, because there may be some add-ons that we want to put into the proposal, maybe a couple of more parks concept plans, and then potentially some additional public input for the first ward. So that's the preamble, and I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Trevor, if you wouldn't mind that button right in the middle there, we'll turn that. There we go, perfect. Trevor, you'd like to bring us up to speed a little bit for the commission, and then I'll ask Commissioner Babcock, even though she's had a very, very short time on the Parks and Rec Committee, to share a little background. I will as well, and then we'll open up for commissioner questions. So a little historical perspective on the process for you, if you could.
Okay, sure. So a little historical process in our firm. We're Grand Rapids-based and Kalamazoo-based landscape architecture firm. Like Frank had mentioned, we have done work with the city on Community Park. We did the master plan for that project, kind of at the tail end of the previous 5-year master planning effort. We were brought in for that, and then we did the implementation for that park. Our firm has also done quite a bit of work at Millennium Park over the last 20 years. And dealt with Frank and Scott and all the others at the planning department on that. We were excited to get this proposal. We do a lot of 5-year park and rec master plans. We understand that they are a requirement of the DNR. So if you want to be eligible for grants to build stuff or to acquire stuff and have DNR funding, you have to have a current plan on file. So that plan needs to be on file with the state by February 1st of 2023. So when we receive the RFP, our schedule is to really get through, there's some basic requirements that the DNR wants. You have to do an inventory of all the parks. You have to do your community description, all those kind of boilerplate things. But the guts and the real goodness that comes out of this process is really like the public engagement components. Just conforming with the community what they want now versus 5 years ago. Some of it's the same, some of that stuff changes. The other part is that in our proposal we typically what comes out of this is there's usually some park plans, like you want to be specific about this park or that park, and you want to dive into some more detail, and that might have focus groups specifically in those neighborhoods. So we've got that as part of our package as well. So we're just really excited to work on this project and continue with the City of Walker. So any questions you have, I can answer.
All right, Commissioner Babcock, any thoughts?
It was just, you guys had a really great RFP. Like he said, I've only been in the Parks and Rec Committee for 1 meeting, so I had to speed read all the different RFPs, and it was cool to come in and see the unanimous decision, and I had felt that same feeling without even talking to anybody before. So one of the biggest things that we were impressed by was your commitment to a diverse and inclusive area for all abilities, and just being conscious of our footprint. So we were really impressed with that, and I look forward to hopefully working with you.
And Commissioners, I'll open up for comment. I will say from a historical perspective, having went through Community Park back in the day, and that was quite a lengthy process. We had tables and charts and sticky notes all over the walls and whiteboards in here. And, you know, and I think back to movie night in the park last week even, and taking a really deep reflection on what that park has become to us as a city as we hold events there. And there was some really wise investments back in the day, and but we had a lot of good guidance along the way too. So that being said, I know that I personally have some experience with them, but commissioners have any thoughts that you may have, questions?
No questions, just a comment. I sat in the meeting, I don't know, several weeks ago when we went through some of the requests for quotes, and I was very, very impressed with your firm, and I think that's a really positive recommendation from the committee, and I know that the other team members were very excited to learn more about the request for quote that came specifically from you. I think you guys really were parallel with what we're thinking of how to merge forward with this activity.
Just, you're still going to nail down the scope a little bit, you said, Frank, is that right? So, but just broadly, I mean, I did read through it, but there's a lot of material. You're going to inventory everything, look around, be able to justify a request for funding for some of these things through the state, right? That's all very important, a good reminder, thank you. Are you looking at all at possible new parks? Are you looking at English Hills at all, or is that on some separate track? Those are my questions.
Yeah, in regards to like the inventory, you know, there's state requirements. You have to essentially say what you have, right, and what's in those parks. And there's some national standards that they like you to go by. Essentially, it says once you get through this inventory, here's how many softball fields you have, here's how many soccer fields you have. But what we like to do is tailor it to the communities that are actually using the park. So if there are things in there, we want to be sure that the community feels like they have enough of, you know, this and are maybe deficient in this. So that's some of the, we do what's required, but also we want to personalize it to the communities that we're ultimately going to use the spaces.
But you will be able to then give us sort of an industry standard assessment of how we stack up.
Yeah, absolutely, both from the needs of the programs that you have, but then also an accessibility audit. So how are your parks meeting the accessibility? That gets back to that inclusive piece. Are there barriers to get to your parks? Are there barriers within the parks? And then back to your one point. So each one of these will have opinions of probable cost. So we'll do estimates. So it gives you a roadmap of what the funding needs will be for each park, and then you can determine which ones you might want to solicit grants for.
It's nice to see Sue Lynn's name still on there, and
Yeah.
Definitely tenured list. So commissioners, quick, I know we've got an action step on here later, but is there any concerns, anything that we have for any further questions? Otherwise, we'll kick Trevor loose. Thank you for making the trip in. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Trevor. All right, next up, Tricia. Let's, if we could, we'll head over the, let's touch on the two rezone requests we have tonight. There's some moving parts with those, and if you give us the background.
Are you ready for me to speak to both of those rezones?
Sure. When we take the, let's start, we've got the first one is Lewis Farms, then we'll hit the Northridge next then.
Okay.
And Commission,
So it's the one that says Lewis Farms.
and I think we just have to be in slide mode, presentation mode. That's right.
I can't ever remember how to use this remote, so bear with me.
Actually, go down on that bottom right, Madam Clerk. Yep, there you go. There you go.
Oh, subtitles. Did I do that?
Wow. Oh, that's a recording piece.
Not sure if I'm doing this right.
Tell you what, we'll just roll with that.
I
How's
can
that?
use the mouse.
Okay. We might need to go out of presentation mode though, and come back into that to make the subtitles go away. There we go. All right,
Still listening. I'm sorry. I'm just gonna go with it.
to the bottom left. Yep, on the PowerPoint, bottom left, that white thing that's lit.
This thing?
Yep,
Okay. Oh, okay. We're
there you
good.
go. We
Sorry
got
about
her.
that. So on your agenda tonight, you have a couple of rezone requests. The first one is Lewis Farms West, which is a request to rezone from MPUD, which is mixed use PUD, to RPUD 1 and CPUD. And the action requested by the City Commission tonight is to review the rezone request from MPUD to CPUD and RPUD 1, and to offer an approval or a denial, or refer the case back to the Planning Commission. So again, this is a rezone, this is the first reading. Property address is 1500 Wilson Avenue. The lot size is 32.88 acres. Current zoning district is mixed use PUD. And future land use calls for 2 to 4 units per acre residential growth and neighborhood node. And the general location of this site is on the corner of Leonard and Wilson, northeast corner. And Brandon Visser is our applicant of Steve Visser Builders. So, brief history here. The Lewis Farms PASP was approved in 2019 under the MPUD zoning. And that plan really showed two separate pieces, with the commercial over here and the residential over here. And you can see those in this, in the upper yellow area here. That's the previous plan. So the PASP ended up expiring due to no action on an FASP. And when we had talked with the applicant, and he asked for some guidance as to how to go forward with starting development on this site. He was, asked, do we try to go under the MPUD, or do we rezone to something else that might be more appropriate? And since the intent of the MPUD district is more of an integrated, a true integration of commercial and mixed uses together, potentially even in the same building. So we advised the applicant to rezone one corner to CPUD, and for the residential component, RPUD 1. And so on August 3rd, they went to the Planning Commission, and they received a favorable recommendation, or they forwarded a favorable recommendation to the City Commission for the rezone. But they did end up tabling the PASP for a number of different issues. One of the main ones being that the wetlands had not yet been delineated. And we knew that that was going to be a factor in how the site was going to be laid out. And so, there wasn't a huge comfort level with moving forward with the PASP. So the PASP has not yet been approved. And what's being proposed is a 121 unit townhome development, along with 3 commercial outlets over here in this this upper corner. And so what I want to point out here is that The future land use map does call for neighborhood node in that same area where the commercial or the CPUD is being requested. And the residential growth, 2 to 4 units per acre, the proposed zoning district is consistent with what the master plan calls for there as well. And so neighborhood node is a designation that would favor low intensity or small scale businesses like retail, office, restaurants, etc. And the residential growth is what it is. It's 2 to 4 units per acre. So any residential uses that don't exceed that 2 to 4 units per acre for density would be appropriate. So I'm not going to go into all these recommendations in terms of the other aspects of the PASP, but you know, in a lot of developments, we take in consideration a lot of these things when it comes to the rezone. So the future land use obviously is going to be probably the number one. We're also looking at street connections. Is the connectivity there like the master plan calls for? Is the density consistent with what the master plan is calling for? And is the neighborhood being designed in line with that community character area? So the proposed PASP, you know, this slide here is from my previous presentation at the Planning Commission. Doesn't necessarily apply now because I received a revised plan just today at about 4 o'clock, which is somewhat significantly different. So geographically, the zoning request is going to be the same, but in looking at it now, we're thinking that the PASP being unapproved and still having to go back to the Planning Commission with a lot more of those aspects that need to be reviewed. Like, we haven't even had a chance to review what came in today. So this is what the residential component looked like for the RPUD 1 zoning designation that's being requested. And then this is the plan that I received this afternoon. And so, you know, previously the Planning Commission had asked for some changes as it pertains to buffering, road placement in the CPUD, and then also some more buffering with the residential piece. But again, the big one was that they wanted to see the wetlands delineated because they knew that it could potentially significantly change the plan. And as you can see, I think it really has. And so the City Commission, again, is being asked to make a decision on the rezoning or decide if it's more appropriate to kick it back to the Planning Commission for further review. Because again, the Planning Commission voted to forward a favorable recommendation to the City Commission on the plan that was presented to them at that time on the PASP. So I think best practice would be for the Planning Commission to, you know, have an approval in place before the City Commission offers an approval on the zoning.
And I would support that. We do have that provision in your zoning ordinance that you can detach the zoning from the actual PUD plan. But I agree with Tricia. Best practice is both components should come to the City Commission for review. So our recommendation would be to send this back to Planning Commission for more consideration.
Commissioners, questions, discussion on this topic. Commissioner Burke?
I have trouble understanding how it was approved in the first place a few years ago. If it was MPUD, doesn't look MPUD to me at all, not remotely. So I don't even understand. And so no, I have zero interest personally, Mayor, in approving a rezone to allow for something that we don't want in the master plan anyway, or we didn't want in the master plan anyway with the MPUD. MPUD's there for a reason.
Can I interject just
Sure.
to clarify? When I started here in '04, this site was already zoned MPUD. And I looked at the MPUD code, and the MPUD code at that time said no gas stations, so that was a problem. And then the MPUD code said also the mixture of uses was to be integrated, particularly in buildings, not spatially, horizontally. So I think the MPUD zoning was never going to work here. That's why in the master plan update, that mixed use concept was taken out, and it was realigned with something that's probably more consistent with what you're looking at on the screen, which is commercial at the northeastern corridor, on a corner of Leonard and Wilson, and then matching some kind of compatible residential from Wilson to Kinney. So the mixed PUD is really not on the drawing board anymore, and it's more in line with what these folks are showing now. And we did have some discussion probably a year or two ago in this room at a city commission meeting where connectivity to Wilson Avenue into Timber Creek, or Tall Timber, that street, was taken off. If you remember, we did kind of an on-the-fly exercise because people are very upset about that. So that is shown on this plan as well. But just to clarify, the mixed PUD is no longer part of the equation here. They're asking to change that zoning and get into the CPUD and the RPUD one that would be consistent with the new master plan.
You're gonna have to help me understand that better. Not right now.
So noted. Commissioners to the left, any questions, comments?
I think that it makes sense to wait till we have the full plan, especially if the plan is changed, to wait on the rezoning.
I agree, I'd bump it back to the planning committee.
Yeah, and I would just add that I think the big issue that I saw when we were reviewing this with the PASP was, and this is for my part on the commercial side, and where I see the discontinuity with what we've proposed in the master plan is on that commercial segment where we had proposed the neighborhood node. We were looking for low volume commercial, more neighborhood scale, and what came through included a drive-through. And the gas station there, I think there was an expectation for a long time, it's been discussed for a long time, a gas station on that corner of this intersection. So for my part, what I said that evening is I can live with that, assuming the rest of it gets redesigned to better fit what we're looking to do there, right? Resizing it to be at a scale that the folks that live in these neighborhoods to the, northeast can kind of exist there a little bit and utilize those commercial spaces in a way that's intuitive and not, I guess, high volume commercial vehicle trip drivers. So that's where, for my part, I came in with concerns about the PASP. I'm hoping to see some changes along those lines as we get back into review of the Lewis Farms development. But I think that on the residential side, they were not far off from what we had kind of been working towards for that part of the site. And for my part, the rezoning is not probably far off from where we're going to land, but I think it is probably best practice to the point of staff to make sure those things stay together as much as possible so that we can, again, my perspective is, as I sit here on city commission, we all get one look at this thing, right? The rezone is the only opportunity we have to ensure compliance at the planning level with the master plan. So that's where, if we were to approve it first, we kind of we take our hand off the wheel.
And I'd just add that neighborhood node means something to me. It doesn't just mean put commercial stuff there. If it's a, eye doctor, how is that a node? Yeah. Right? I mean, these words should have meanings. And then I think you showed a new plan you got today, which takes away all the stuff I liked. Is that right? The dog park, the rec area. Is that what I saw?
Just a little further to the north.
Yeah, that was one of the, in my 5 minutes of looking at the
now I
recent
see.
plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I will say, Commissioner Burke, this is new to me. So.
This is
Well,
hot off the presses. 4 o'clock today, Randy Feenstra dropped it off.
so it sounds like we have unanimous. I right now, and I really, I have zero interest even going forward of us when we get these split things that come in. We're being asked to approve a rezone without a PSAP, so maybe guidance to Planning Commission, Commissioner Gilbert. and our planning director for the city, that when these come, they come hand in hand going forward.
I'll pass
I
that
know that
feedback along.
there's a slight bit of latitude within the zoning ordinance, but to your point, you just hit it right, summed it up better than I could say it. So we've got to be extra judicious on this. And the fact that this just came in this afternoon, we've got changes to it. There's no way we can approve a rezoning for this. So my suggestion, when we get to the 7 o'clock meeting, I'll ask for a motion to table this, to send back to the planning commission. They will make the changes, hopefully, that meets the PC's measurements, and then both that and the rezoning request come back to us at the same time. At that time, as a city commission, we'll have to remove it from the table to put it back on. All make sense? We haven't been down that road too often, so I wanted to make sure we covered it, so. Good with you? Okay. All right, next, what time are we at? 6:56. Let's touch on our Northridge Walkerview piece. And if we roll into 7 o'clock, Tricia, we'll hit a pause and we'll come back to this. Perfect. You might want to take off that sound caption again. Yeah, it might be set up as a default right now. There we go.
Also, I can't see that screen all that well. Okay, so this second rezone is also a first reading. We are looking at the western 11.87 acres of an existing lot within the Walkerview PUD. And so the action requested by the City Commission tonight is to review the rezone request from CPUD to IPUD for lots C9 and C11 of the Walkerview PUD, and to approve, deny, or refer back to the Planning Commission for further review. So the property address is at 2000 Northridge, and again, this is just the western 11.87 acres of an existing parcel. The zoning district, as I mentioned, this parcel is dual zoned, CPUD and IPUD, which is industrial PUD and commercial PUD. Future land use designation is enterprise. And the general location is on the south side of Northridge Drive, just east of Northridge, Walker Avenue intersection. And then I believe Jeff Edwards will be at the meeting tonight on behalf of the applicant with Rockford Construction. So this site is situated just east of that Holiday Inn that's over there on Northridge Drive. And this image shows the portion of the parcel that's being requested to be rezoned. So you've got sites or lots C9 and C11, C meaning CPUD. Uses that would be permitted in that district would be the commercial uses approved by the within the PASP for the Walkerview PUD. A lot of acronyms. And then this tail end of what the parcel I've been referring to as the fish parcel, that's already zoned IPUD. And so for the future user to be able to utilize this parcel in the way that they would like to use it, the whole thing must be zoned IPUD. And so when the Walkerview PUD was first rezoned, I think there was some anticipation of some commercial uses surrounding that hotel. And it's just been kind of stagnant for the last few years. There hasn't been a lot of action. And we know that a lot of development is driven by the market and what's needed from developers. And so there hasn't been a lot of interest in this parcel. So it makes sense for the parcel to be utilized as industrial, as that's one of the most high demand for industrial development. But there's still a lot, so if the city commission does approve the rezone, there's still ample commercial space over here in the Walkerview PUD. And so there's still some potential for those commercial uses that were originally anticipated when Walkerview was originally approved. But this site is just kind of tucked back here behind the hotel. It's surrounded by a lot of big industrial, and again, from a staff perspective, it makes sense. And then to give you an idea of what would be proposed here if the zoning was approved, I'm sure you're familiar with the large building at 3501 Fruit Ridge. So that one was developed by Honeycrisp Ventures. And so this would be, they would be the developer who would be interested in constructing a large spec building. So this is just a concept plan for that site. It's kind of an odd shape, and they've got some constraints, but this is essentially what it could look like. They'd obviously have to go back to the planning commission for final area site plan approval. But that would be what the rezoning, what the purpose is for that parcel. And that's all I have.
All right, we are at 7:01. We'll take a pause on this. We'll come back to this, Tricia, if we can, shortly. I'm going to call our regular city commission meeting to order. Ask Commissioner Burke to deliver the invocation. Lead us in Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, thank you for this time to focus our attention and plot the best course we can for our city. Help us appreciate our many blessings and watch out as we finish the summer. And please look out for our police and our armed forces, and particularly today our firefighters from Walker and the region who dealt with that major fire all last night in heroic fashion. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen, thank you. We invite the audience to stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. If I could ask our clerk to please call the roll.
Mayor Carey.
Present.
Commissioner Burke.
present.
Commissioner DeShane.
Present?
Commissioner Chase. Commissioner Groders.
Present.
Commissioner Babcock.
Present.
Commissioner Gilbert.
All right, the band's all together. Look for, if there's no discussion on the August 8, 2022 City Commission meeting minutes, I'll entertain a motion for approval and support. Is there
I'll
any
make-
discussion? None?
I'll
Thank
make
you.
a motion.
Thank
I'll
you.
support.
All right, approval for Commissioner DeShane, support for Commissioner Chase. Any other discussion on the minutes? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? All right, minutes are passed. Next is any public comment on agenda items only. Is there anybody in the audience wishing to speak on agenda items? Seeing none. Reports from city manager. We covered at the 6:30 committee of the whole meeting, the Walker Parks and Rec Master Plan RFP responses, had discussion, and Frank, do we need an official motion at this point, or you've?
For record keeping, I think it'd be helpful to have a motion approving Viridis.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion from a commissioner in support.
I'll make a motion.
Commissioner Babcock, Commissioner Burke. Any other discussion on the Parks RFP? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, we are good. Next on the list is the consent agenda, expenditures in the amount of $4.8,087,298.09. If there's no discussion on the bills, entertain a motion to approve those and support, please.
I'll make a motion.
Support.
DeShane, Groders, any discussion on the bills? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Thank you, very good. Next is Resolution 22-636, is the updated resolution for the City of Walker escrow funds. I'll turn to our Assistant City Manager.
Yep, you're hearing a lot from me, so I'll try to minimize. I will be as brief as possible. In 2021, you folks updated the fee schedule for Planning Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals, and also all of our building services. The other side of the coin is things that are not covered by your fee schedule. And we lump those into a policy called Escrow. When I started here in 2004, we built an escrow policy, and that served us well for 18 years. There's a couple of updates we want to make, and this is the policy that you have in resolution form before you tonight. I did send out the red line version earlier today, and if you had a chance to look at that, it's mostly legal update and language update. There's not a lot of substantive change in there. What it does call out is our ability now to require escrow for zoning board of appeals applications, land divisions. Sometimes land divisions require city attorney review. Land division is when someone has a piece of property they want to divide in some way that doesn't have to go to the planning commission. We call those meets and bounds splits. Someone owns 20 acres and they want to subdivide it and build homes. Sometimes that gets complicated. And so we usually involve our city attorney in that. That would now be covered under an escrow policy. So there's also provision in there for other other activities of the community development department, because there's always some kind of an oddball project that comes up where we need to use the city attorney. So this would also be a catch-all for staff to be able to say, you know, this is one that's unusual. Maybe it's something with the Building Code Board of Appeals or what have you. And we really need an escrow for that as well, because we're going to have costs over and above the normal fee covering mechanism. So those are basically what it comes down to. There's also an appeal provision in here that does involve the city commission. If you didn't see that, whenever we build things and update things, we always want to make sure that we have a due process statement in there. And essentially what that says in this policy now is that if you feel that somehow this escrow policy is being applied against you in some kind of a negative manner, you can appeal to the city commission for relief either on the fee, the escrow fee that we're charging. On a large project that comes in, Jeff Edwards just walked in from Rockford. When Walkerview came in, we started with a $50,000 escrow because we knew that was going to be a large, complicated project. So even though the policy says, you will start with 1,000, there's also a provision in there that allows your staff to say, this is a large project. We're going to need quite a bit of city attorney and consulting engineer, and we're going to give you a charge up front. And we'll track those charges. You can see those in the escrow policy. And like Jeff asked, through Walkerview, we would give him a report, either on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis, to show how that money was being spent. So that's I think the third major change to this policy. Otherwise, it's what we've been using since '04. It works well. We just wanted to modernize some of the language, some of the references in there, and then the three things we just discussed. More than open for questions.
Commissioners? To
I
my left.
had one question. I didn't see in there how long they get to add more money to the escrow. Is that something that's somewhere else that I didn't see?
Well, the way we wrap these projects up is once a project across our departments, engineering, soil erosion, utilities, building permits, planning and zoning, DPW, then the project becomes completed. And then we'll do a final analysis of outstanding escrow payments, and then that money is given back. So that's really the end of the project. So it can go on for years. A large project like Walkerview, I don't know how many years we've been working on that. Project Lincoln Lawns, that can take years to develop. So the escrow continues to come along with the project. And if we get low on the balance there, that's when Tricia would say to the developers, we need X amount of dollars to replenish your escrow account.
Yeah, I guess that was my question. Like, how long do they have from her request to make the deposit? Do we need to specify that time frame in there, or is that?
Well, I think it's implicit in the language.
Okay.
The kicker for the developer is that if that isn't replenished, then the policy does say that your project comes to a close until the escrow is reimbursed. So we keep a close eye on that, and Tricia's done a good job working with Dan DeVries in finance to have our BS&A programs talking to each other. so that she'll be able to track in a much more comprehensive manner what the balances are on all these escrow accounts. Okay.
Good questions. Commissioners, any further questions? All right, do we have approval on this or somebody willing to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Support.
So, any other discussion on Resolution 22-636? Seeing none, I have a motion of Commissioner Chase, support from Commissioner Gilbert. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, Resolution 22-636 is passed. Next is Ordinance 22-521 is the first reading of the rezone from MPUD to CPUD and RPUD 1 for Lewis Farms at 1500 Wilson Avenue Northwest. We discussed this at length in our 6:30 Committee of the Whole meeting. Is there further discussion from the City Commission on this? I think we're unanimously of the mind right now to table this, to send back to the Planning Commission, bring that back at that point in time, with the PSAP approved, the rezoning request at the same time, and then the go forward to is guidance to the Planning Commission that we get both at the same time. Those will probably keep kicking them back, and that's not going to make anybody happy. So, all right. I'll entertain a motion for approval to table Ordinance 22-521 to send back to the Planning Commission so that they may send it back to us with an approved PSAP at a future date. It's not that we're denying this, it's that we're tabling this to send back so that both come back together.
Motion to table Resolution 22-521, Lewis Farms, 1500 Wilson Avenue, and return to the Planning Commission.
Thank you. Commissioner Burke, do I have support?
Support.
Commissioner Groders. Any other discussion on Ordinance 22-521 and the motion to table? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, so Ordinance 22-521 is tabled. Let's come back. Tricia, if you'd come up to the front. Jeff, we may or may not need you in a second here. We'll see here. So is there any other questions from a staff standpoint for Tricia on the rezone request on Northridge Drive?
I don't have questions, but I just will add some commentary from the Planning Commission side. I think on this one, our perspective was that this really amounts to just kind of shifting the line of where the commercial starts and where the industrial ends. Mm-hmm. And with, I guess, what we've seen in terms of the trends, the way that the corridor is developing, we thought this was a reasonable complement to how we're moving forward in the area. So we all on Planning Commission felt comfortable with moving forward this way. So just for some context background, that's where I'm at with it.
Okay. Commissioner Burke?
I mean, it sounds fine to me. I think I'm just, as long as we're not violating some promise we have to, implied or real, to the Holiday Inn, if we're putting industrial next to them now. There aren't any houses there. There's nothing there to worry about in that regard. And I assume we're not going to have some, extraordinarily loud complex over there. But that would be the only thing I would worry about, is that we were breaking some covenant with the neighbors there, thinking that it would stay commercial instead of industrial. But otherwise, it sounds fine to me.
Yeah, I would kind of tag on to what Commissioner Burke said. We need to make sure that whatever does go by them is not going to be have a loud noise ordinance, or they're going to be Holiday Inn residents are not going to want to stay there.
Fair enough. All right. I think we're good with you for right now, then. I'm seeing kind of around the horn here. I'll invite Jeff up. You made the trip here. If there's any additional insight he'd like to share on behalf of Walkerview. So, welcome back.
Thank you, Mayor. Jeff Edwards with RDG Walker.
Jeff,
Hit
you hit
button.
that. Perfect.
There we go. Jeff Edwards with RDG Walker LLC. Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I would just like to say that I'm very grateful to be in this place, and this is really the culmination of a few years of conversation around how can we best position this property to accommodate the market demand that we've seen for industrial uses. And in terms of the question about the adjacent property owner and the hotel use, we do not currently have any covenants or agreements in place that would conflict with what we're proposing in terms of this industrial use. And in terms of what the future occupants of this building would represent, we're not talking about a heavy stamping plant or a business or operation that would generate a lot of noise. This will be a very clean, modern facility. In fact, Ben Seetsma, who represents Honeycrisp Ventures, who's our buyer, he recently completed a project on Fruit Ridge I'm sure many of you are aware of. So we had a chance to tour that recently and really trying to model the same program here. So very clean, very modern uses in this building. And I think, again, the rezoning allows greater investment and greater job creation as well. So we're excited to move forward this, and again, very grateful that you're considering it tonight.
Thank you, Jeff. I have some comments I'll withhold. I'll defer to commissioners. I'll start to my right. Commissioner Gilbert, anything this way?
No, like I said, I'm good with it. I feel pretty comfortable with how that lays out with the existing uses and what I think all of those uses are designed for, so.
I work in hospitality, so I'm glad they mentioned the noise first, because that was the first thing that popped into my head. If we had a hotel, we get a lot of complaints about the area noise, so I would echo what they had to say about just being considerate of the guests.
Good. Commissioner Burke, all set? Last thing I'll bring us home then. Sounds like we're good. We'll take a motion just a minute here, but I think on Jeff's behalf, I'd be remiss if I didn't say we've done some prospective business visits out here over time and marched through the kind of the weeds out there a little bit. And really, as I look at this, I want to give credit to Jeff and his team. And then we've already had a very high level of success with Ben and the Honeycrisp folks over at Formal and Fruit Ridge, who deliver on what they promised they were going to do. And when you got two partners like that, I have a high degree of comfort with an emotion to approve the rezoning. So without further ado, if we are good to go, I'll entertain a motion for approval and support, please.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll support.
Commissioner Gilbert, approval, or make the motion. Commissioner DeShane, any other discussion on the rezone? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, we are good. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
So ordinance 22-522, the first reading is passed. Next on the list is any other public comment on agenda or non-agenda items. Anybody in the audience? Going once, going twice. Seeing none, I'll turn to the left with our city manager.
Only comment I have is just a reminder, I know we need to set it up yet, but we're looking at a building committee meeting on September 12th, I think it was, in the late afternoon to talk about next steps for the potential libraries. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh?
Last time you'll hear from me tonight, Wednesday night, 6 p.m. in this room, we will have, the Planning Commission will have a work session with the Vista 45 developers. City Commission is invited to that. It's a public meeting. We will have the whiteboard out and plans out, and staff will be available to facilitate as much as the Planning Commission wants us to. So we will be prepared to discuss the master plan and their plan, and pro and con, and we'll see what comes out of the end of that process. So that'll be Wednesday night, 6 o'clock in this room. Thank you.
And I think on that's another one of these where we've got to split the, we've got a request for rezone that may get in front of us before the PSAP. And I think I would just caution the commission that I want to be consistent with that process of how we view those things. And quite frankly, I would not be remiss if I didn't say, so I'm looking for some significant changes to the PSAP in line with the master plan. So that being said, Commissioner Burke?
I concur, and I'll be there Wednesday night.
I will not be in there, I will not be at Wednesday night's meeting. I have to move my daughter to MSU that day, so unfortunately I will be missing that. I just wanted to say kudos to the fire department for their, all the service that they do for the people that are in need. Really appreciate it.
We had a successful employee luncheon last week Wednesday. It was great to see all the employees together and get all together. And then Tom, myself, and Gary had a personnel committee meeting today earlier, which was very successful as well.
Commissioner Growers?
Planning to be there Wednesday night. Looking forward to that.
Commissioner Babcock?
No, we had our Parks and Rec Committee meeting, obviously. Thanks to Aaron for all of your hard work. You did a great job of putting that together.
All right. Commissioner Gilbert?
Of course, Wednesday, sounds like everyone's already determined their attendance. Good to hear that everyone's got it on the radar screen at least. I did attend the Grand Rapids Policy Conference last week, was it, Mayor?
Tuesday, yeah.
Really interesting to see how they've reconfigured their focus to local issues. So that's an organization that I encourage folks to make sure that you stay akin to. It's something that I think they've heard from their membership among the business community, that local issues are incredibly important to those businesses. How we handle things as a local city commission has a big impact on the experience of those businesses in the community. So that was just a really interesting perspective. I think a lot of the speakers were local as well. So lots of issues to come, lots of housing stuff, but definitely was a really good experience there. But I think that was really the only thing worth noting.
Good stuff. Thank you. Madam Clerk? All right. Without further ado, I have nothing else other than, I got to come back here a second. Parks Master Plan, Parks and Rec, Aaron, awesome job taking control of that group and leading us. And then what was over here a minute ago? You had
The employee luncheon and personnel committee.
Yeah, how that was really cool. I mean, it wasn't 90 degrees, but to be able to see people in a social setting. I know we all get busy, but it's nice when we do those things and whatever else we might do for years of service stuff in the winter months. It's one of those, I think, bonds that we have as a elected body with city staff, and as you're able to make it, there definitely there's a very high ROI in our relationships with it. So that being said, I'll entertain a motion for approval to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Support.
Gilbert and Groders, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, we stand adjourned.